Welcome back to Family Engagement for Center Directors. This is a 1-hour module. Before taking this special Center Directors module, be sure you have completed a few things. The Beyond the Newsletter, Introduction to Family Engagement for Early Education Programs. That was an hour introduction module. The second is the self-assessment training modules 1 through 3, which covered all 5 self-assessment objectives. And that you've actually completed the Family Engagement for Education program self-assessment for your center program. You can have completed that individually, and as a best practice, we recommend that you've also had 2 families and 2 other staff at your program also complete it. The objectives for this 1-hour training is to demonstrate understanding on the foundation of family engagement best practices. You should feel like a pro at that by now. The second is to identify 3 new action items based on the reflections of what you learned in your self-assessment. And finally, we're going to create an action plan for what you're going to do next in terms of building a family engagement team and a plan for continued improvement. Let's get started. Involvement to partnership. What did we learn? A few things. How we used to think and what we now know. We've learned a lot about involvement is doing to families, where partnership is doing with families. Involvement is giving information to families and hoping that they do something with it. Partnership is hosting workshops or having opportunities for families to practice and build their skills. Large group gatherings is good for information dissemination. But when we want to have a partnership and a relationship building moment with families, that needs to be more one-on-one or at least small groups. Involvement usually means that we only partner when there are issues or problems. In a true partnership, we want to celebrate milestones and progress together, and we want to have this give and take relationship where families feel like they can tell us what happened over the weekend that was really exciting, and we feel like we can share with them the little moments throughout the day that we want them to celebrate too. Involvement is come if we call, kind of to that issues or problems point. And then partnership is understanding this funds of knowledge. So we learned about funds of knowledge and that teachers have things that families could really benefit from knowing, and families know things that are unique about their kiddo that could really help that teacher out. So when we come to the table with this funds of knowledge mindset, I want to know more from you and you want to know more from me. And collectively, we create a really great system for the kiddo. Involvement assumes families know how to support their child's education. We know that all families have the capacity to support their child's education, but we really need to be the ones that equip families with the right information. We set the tone for partnerships, and we teach families how to be involved. As early educators, we have a really big objective on our plates, which is to send families into the K-12 world equipped and expecting partnership from their child's teachers. If as early educators, we set the tone that you drop them off, you pick them up, don't ask questions unless we call you, then that's how families are going to go back into the K-12 environment, assuming I drop them off, I pick them up, I don't ask questions. Family engagement is not a program. It's not something that we'll get to later. Instead, it's how you approach student learning. All of our work is set on the foundation of the dual capacity building framework. Hopefully you're feeling comfortable with this framework by now. You're in love with it, just like all of us are. Really understanding the challenges associated with family engagement. It's not easy. It's tough work, and it's harder with some families than others. There's also just that human to human aspect. You know, not all people get along. There's personalities, there's experiences. We all bring our biases to the table. So we just have to recognize the challenges in order to move forward towards effective partnerships. The purple is the essential conditions. And as center directors, this is really where you've got to focus your attention. You're building the conditions within the center so that effective family engagement can thrive. Until those challenges are understood and those essential conditions are in place, policies and programs are just going to flop. You might have one here and there random event that goes really well. But when you think about your family engagement as a whole, it will not thrive until your essential conditions are intact. So is your programming interactive? Are you collaborative? Do you have a culturally responsive and respectful environment? Do you look for families' assets and strengths? Do you link every opportunity and conversation you have with families to what their child is learning and what they should be seeing in terms of child development? And do you inherently consider your family's relationship with your center as something that's built on mutual trust so that they feel like they can come to you with questions and your staff feel comfortable going to them with questions? The dual capacity model is based on the 4 core beliefs. This was back in module 1. All families have dreams for their children and want the best. All families have the capacity to support their kids. Family and school staff are equal partners, and the responsibility for cultivating and sustaining these partnerships rests primarily with you, the school leader. In this activity, we had you circle the belief that resonated the most, and we had you star the belief that you're most challenged by. So I hope at this point you've had time to really reflect on these core beliefs and have a good understanding of where you are. You probably aren't giving yourselves 4 stars on all 4 of these, but you should have a good idea of which one you kind of struggle with from your own childhood experiences or professional experiences. And that's just good to kind of flag and think about and grow. Essential conditions. So I just went through these a little bit, but again, those process conditions. Is this relational? Have we linked it to learning? Is it asset-based? Are we being culturally responsive? Is this collaborative with our families? Do they have an opportunity to interact? Is the organization as a whole, you as the leadership, do you embrace family engagement within the systems of how you operate your center? Do you integrate family engagement into all of the strategies within your center? And sustain, do you actually allocate time, budget, your time to improving family engagement best practices at your center? And then you move into the policy and program goals of the dual capacity model. This is where we had you list all of your current family engagement programs, and then you put a check mark next to the ones that pass the 4C test. So this is a way for us to have a little cheat sheet of, is this program set up for success, or is there a good chance it's not going to be very high impact? Well, let's ask ourselves, does this program or activity help families build skills? Are they going to leave with a new skill or something new that they learned? Yes or no? Will families have the opportunity during this activity or strategy to build their connection, either with another parent or with one of your staff members? Is the activity deep and rich enough that they could actually have a change in beliefs and values? So for early education, we really think about, do families leave your events thinking more about their brain development of their child and these really important critical years of development? So we really want to help families understand that school doesn't start in kindergarten, that a lot of the learning and setting that strong foundation happens in early education. So in this activity or strategy, are you doubling down on that value? And confidence. Are families leaving that event, or is there the opportunity for them to leave that event feeling a little more confident about themselves? I think I can support my kiddo a little bit more than I thought I could, or I feel a little more confident in my relationship with the teacher. I feel a little more confident in accessing community resources. So does it pass the 4C test? We also looked at different roles families can play. So we don't always want to think about, we don't want to pigeonhole families into one type of involved parent, which is your typical, when we think in our head, it's typically that parent that always comes to the parent-teacher conference, always donates when we ask for donations. It's kind of that parent who always volunteers first. But what we learned when we read DeHaab's story is, in fact, that's not the typical parent. And many of us didn't have that type of parent in our own childhood. They may support our learning and education at home or in other ways that don't show up to teachers. So it's our job as educators, and especially as center directors, to think about all the ways families want to be involved in their child's education and what resources and conversations could help those families be even more effective in those different roles. So if it's someone who really wants to support their kids learning at home, they're not super social, they don't have time maybe to chit chat with the teacher at drop off or pick up, or maybe they're just not comfortable in that one-on-one face-to-face setting, but they really do want to support their kiddos learning at home. Our ideas and packets and kits being transferred from school to home so that that parent has what they need to be effective in that role. So the 5 roles families can play is a great tool to kind of check yourself on ways that your center is providing resources and conversations for the variety of families that you're serving. So what did all of that mean? It was a lot of tools, a lot of language, a lot of great checklists and ways for you to analyze and think about your family engagement programming. But at the end of the day, what we're really saying is that family engagement has to go beyond events, one-time events, and newsletters. We have to put our time and energy into strategies that help staff build relationships with families. That's what we're looking for. How can staff get to know our families better? And how can we improve the authentic relationship building between families and teachers? So at the end of the day, if you do nothing else as a center director, create more time and more opportunity for your staff to sit down and talk to families. You looked at the 4 versions of a family school partnership, and I throw this back up here just because it has been our most popular resource in K through 12 trainings and in early education trainings. It's a great quick snapshot of where you're at currently, from Fortress School to Partnership School. So hopefully you've had the opportunity to fill this out, and maybe you've even come back to it throughout your learning journey so far. Great tool to have handy. And then you put these ideas into action. So we looked at quick and easy everyday actions. You've seen the Family Engagement Digital Playbook, which is chock full of concrete activities and ideas. You also have your 18-page-ish family engagement guide on the why, the how, and the what. And you've done a program self-assessment. So you've done a lot of work. This was the self-assessment and where you should be at now. So we are all the way full circle to where you should be currently. You have learned the foundations of family engagement. You probably have a pretty good eye and ear now for, that doesn't sound like effective family engagement. That sounds more like a fun event. So you should have a little bit of kind of your bearings on what effective family engagement looks like and what events look like. Not that events are bad, but we just need to make sure that we're not calling our family engagement programming our welcome event at the beginning of the school year. So having our grip on that, and now you're moving into more of what does action planning and goal setting look like so that your center can go from maybe a come if we call school to a partnership school, or if you've done your self-assessment, which you should have at this point, maybe a level 1 or level 2 school up to a level 3 school. So these are the 5 objectives that you looked at: relationship building, communications, shared responsibility, advocacy, and community partnerships. So now I'm going to take a breather and give you a minute to reflect. Which area were you strongest? Which area gave you the most challenge? And hopefully you've had multiple people complete this and give you their completed self-assessments, because that makes for some really neat reflection. Look across the hopefully 5 or 6 self-assessments that you have. Where was there consensus? Where did everybody agree? Where was the biggest differences? And what trends do you notice among families, educators, and yourself as a building leader? So pause this video now and take a good 5-10 minutes to look at that self-assessment and just reflect on what that told you about your program. You can do that in your learning journal. So pause this video now. Now we're going to move into a special message for center directors, and you can find this in the How section of the Kentucky Family and Early Childhood Program Partnership Guide. The 3 M's that we call out for center directors as your task as the building leader is to motivate, measure and monitor, and model. Let's go into a few ideas for each of those. First, motivate. Your job as the center director is to really set the tone in your center for how we talk about families and how we interact with them. So reflect for a minute on how you do that. How do you set the tone as the leader in the school? What gets measured gets done. If we have heard a lot from teachers that say family engagement may be a priority for them, but if it's not a priority for their supervisor, center director, or principal, it just doesn't get done. There's too many other things. So as the center director, you have to prioritize family engagement, and you have to build it into professional development reviews and evaluations. Spotlight staff doing well with family partnerships. So if you have somebody who's just knocking it out of the ballpark or does something really creative, make a point to hunt those out and spotlight those during staff meetings and in email and newsletters. Just show staff that you're looking for it and you're catching the good. Similarly, do it with families. So if you have a family member who goes above and beyond to initiate a partnership with the school or a teacher, thank that family publicly. Thank you so much for being such a valuable partner, Miss Smith. We really appreciate it. The kind note that you sent to our staff. We couldn't do this work without our families and staff partnering together. Just make a point to always catch those moments where you see family and staff partnering, maybe organically. Continue to assess your own areas of challenge and strengths related to the 4 core beliefs. It's also important to know which families you partner with well and which families cause you the most challenge. And it can be a really cool staff activity to have all of the staff members talk about which kind of families they have the most trouble with and which families they connect best with. Usually these are different families for different staff. And so it can help to say, oh, I can talk to dads all day long. I don't have a problem at all connecting with dads. Just let me know if you ever want me to talk to them. So you can have staff kind of tag team to make sure all of the families are being worked with, so that you have certain staff who are uncomfortable with certain families or just haven't built their skills up. You could have other staff that are like, oh yeah, no problem. I relate to him 100%. As the center director, you should be more concentrated on your program conditions and less on more programs and activities. So get those conditions down pat before you keep piling on new programs and events. Some staff are just going to be naturally gifted working with families. And so capture those staff, elevate that, and have them mentor and teach other staff. Allocate time. We hear this over and over again that staff already have so much on their plates. They don't have the extra time to make 3 phone calls. They don't have the extra time to write that note home. So in place of some staff meetings or in place of some professional development, maybe you already had planned, give that time back to your staff to make those relationship building phone calls or messages home. Number 2, measure and monitor. This does not need to be an extensive handwritten survey. These little surveys up here are the best things we got going right now. Emojis, stars, thumbs up, thumbs down, Likert scale. Just do quick pulse checks via text. You could put it up on a bulletin board in a really clever way. You could just stick out half sheets of paper with 1 or 2 questions each month. And then just have folks slip it into a comment box. Just do quick pulse checks to see what is the temperature, what is the mood of your building right now. Be sure you're doing this with staff and families. Remember, it's dual capacity. So if you're knocking it out of the ballpark with your staff, but your families aren't feeling involved, probably not getting there. We've also seen it work the other way. Families feel really trained, really engaged. they're rocking, but the staff haven't been trained and aren't being worked with on how to partner back with the families. So we have to have dual capacity going at all times. Really simple questions. And again, you could do like a question a month. How engaged do you currently feel with your child's learning? 1 to 5. That's it. That's the whole question. How welcome do you feel at our school? How comfortable are you talking with school staff about concerns and needs? Just really quick, easy conversational questions. For educators, how effective are you with families? How confident do you feel in working with families? Do you know how to connect families with needed resources? Are you getting better with harder to reach families? This gives you the opportunity to change directions when you need, solicit new ideas. So always maybe put what's worked well this month. I mean, just give folks an opportunity to write in an answer if they want. So you can be kind of collecting some new ideas. And then this will help you double down on strategies that seem to be working. We always say when it comes to family engagement practices, it's making the invisible visible and the visible more intentional. This measuring and monitoring is your way to capture those invisible things that are working so you can do more of them. Model. Do as I say and not as I do never works. So before you ask your staff to do something, do a little pilot of your own to see exactly what are you asking them to do. This helps you not only try it out to work out the kinks of a new idea, but it also models for your staff what you mean. So an example of this is if you want staff to make welcoming phone calls to all of the families in August, you should call all of your staff in maybe July and say, hey, here we go, kicking off a new school year. How was your summer? If you broke in the summer, but even if you don't break, like K through 12, you can still do what we call check-in calls. Think of a couple times in your year where you're a little slower. I know there's no slow time, but a little slower. And you could work in times to check in with all of your staff. So the first 2 weeks of August, that's when you make sure you have a 10 to 15 minute call with every staff person, just to check in with them, just that person to person call. You do that first. Find some ways that you feel like it works best, and then ask your staff, say, hey, I want you to do this with your families. Staff lounge area, when we talk about parent-teacher conferences, we really want families to have adult chairs to sit in, feel like the environment they're sitting in is welcoming. And so you should model that for your staff too. When you're meeting with all of your staff, are you meeting in toddler chairs? Is everybody standing against the walls, or have you made it a welcoming environment that lends itself to open discussion and folks feeling comfortable? Greet families by name. This is one of our everyday strategies that we suggest all teachers in the building do. So instead of Jack's mom, hey, Brock, how are you today? As a center director, that's one of the first things you can start doing to model to your staff on how you interact and respect families in the building. This is really common, the venting bond of staff. So be careful that you're not using venting about families as the base of staff bonding and connection. It's super easy to do, a quick trap for all teachers. You all get to lunch, and the way you bond is by griping. And so we want to be careful as we're building family engagement programming that we don't have this other side of our work where we're all bonding as a staff by venting and talking bad about our families. So as center director, pay attention to that and try to change those conversations when you hear them happening. And language matters. So when we're referencing families, we're referencing different cultures. Let's watch the language that we use, because that helps set the tone for the level of respect that we have for our families. Along with this can be our ouch and oops within staff culture. So what we like to do within some of our parent work groups and workshops is we put ouch and oops up on the board, and we say, we want folks to feel free to talk today. We're going to talk about some things that might feel a little uncomfortable. And if someone says something that's offensive to you, you just need to say ouch. And the person who says it will say oops. And you can explain why that's an ouch. What about that comment maybe offended you or feels disrespectful to you? And you allow that other person to learn and then say, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't know, and you can move on. So adopting ouch and oops within a staff culture can really help with some of the implicit bias and some of the cultural responsiveness that we're really wanting to elevate in our schools right now. Start that within your staff culture and you'll see the ripple effect for families. In 3 words, you want your staff to feel confident. You want your staff to have a sense of community among itself, and there to really be a base of kindness, kindness to one another, kindness from you to them, and kindness from them to their families. All right, 3 M's reflection. We're almost done with our module. I want you to consider the 3 M's for center directors and how you'll approach each following this training. How are you going to start to motivate your staff? How are you going to start to measure and monitor progress? And what's going to be your first step in modeling this relationship about building best practices? Pause this video now and reflect in your journal. Okay. The last part of this training is all time for you to think and put your ideas into action. So content section is pretty much over. Now that you've looked at your 3 M's, you've looked at your self-assessment, now 3 ideas, just 3 things that you personally want to do or a staff conversation you want to have. You've got a lot on your mind. There's so many ways to approach this, and each approach is as unique as each center. So think about the everyday actions you've read, your self-assessments, results, each objective. Maybe you're thinking a lot about these 4 core beliefs or these essential conditions or these 3 M's we just talked about. If none of that strikes something for you, which I can't imagine one of those doesn't, but if it doesn't, you also have the digital playbook, which is probably 100 different family engagement concrete activities to choose from. So go into the digital playbook and hunt something out. So right now, this may take you 2 minutes. This may be a place where you want to pause and come back. But you're going to pause this and fill in 3 activities that you want to start with. And then again, we're always kind of checking ourselves. Let's not just do family engagement for the sake of family engagement. What are you trying to accomplish? What core belief are you trying to address? Are you trying to work on an objective from the self-assessment? Is there an essential condition you feel like is off? So thinking through the objectives, the core beliefs, and the essential conditions, what's that purpose of that activity? So pause this now and record 3 new activities and what you're hoping to accomplish with each of those. All right, so we are to our last activity of this module series, and you're just going to make a goal for how you're going to begin building a family engagement team. So just getting kind of your mind going on what that might look like. What we recommend, and if you go into the guide, you'll see a more comprehensive instructions for building a family engagement team and an action plan. But essentially what you want to do is recruit 2 to 3 staff. So we recommend not always recruiting your all-star players and your all-star families, but recruiting the staff and families that will have a positive attitude, but will also be real with you and saying, here's the struggles that we have, or whatever, we don't have time for that. You want some staff and families that are going to push and pull a little bit with you. So how are you going to recruit them? You might have to think about incentives to participate. If those 2 to 3 staff and 2 to 3 families that you're kind of thinking of top of mind, will that ensure diverse voices? So do you have the infant toddler teachers represented? Do you have different ethnic and racial groups represented? So does your 4 to 6 people look like your center? So we always want to think about The folks that are in leadership and that are co-designing the programs, are those the recipients of the programs we're designing? We want to be doing with families and staff, not to families and staff. So think about for a minute those 4 to 6 people, jot those down, a little bit how you might recruit them. Incentives you might offer, who you might need to reach out to get some incentives. Restaurant gift cards, extra break time, extra vacation day. Some centers and family and child care homes have more flexibility than others. So what incentives could you offer your staff and families to participate? And what's that first meeting agenda and pre-work include? You may have already had folks complete the self-assessment, and they may have been the right folks, they may have been the wrong folks. So you might want to get a different team together. You might want to pull those 5 to 6 people back together. And what do you want to talk about? Maybe you want to share those 3 new ideas that you just wrote down and say, hey, do you guys think this is where we should start? You may want to just ask for their reactions to the self-assessment, and maybe they took the first training module. What was their reactions? What are they excited about trying? And then how will you measure if the first meeting went well? So all of this is really important. If you've noticed, in that short-term time, we want to know what is working right now. So you don't really need to wait 6 months or a year. Month to month, meeting to meeting, get little pulse checks from the folks that you're engaging. How's this going? Do you feel engaged? Are you excited? So pause this now and answer these questions in your reflection journal. Some folks love to work in the SMART goal framework, which is great. It's how I prefer to kind of write out action plans. So we've got that for you here and also in your guide. I love that SMART goals have added on this E, equity focused. So how does this goal support access and achievement for all children in your program? How could it be even more accessible to our harder to reach families? So pause this now and answer these 6 questions, and that will round you out for this training module. Thank you. This has been Family Engagement for Center Directors. I hope you found it useful and specific to your role as a building leader. Thank you for the incredible work you do, and please reach out if you have any questions. This was brought to you by the Kentucky Collaborative for Families in Schools, which is led by the Pritchard Committee and the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood.